your practice is primarily invested in exploring the experiences of women and their representation in Saudi Arabia, but also beyond. And you've been described as a critical witness. And you've used the pavilion at Venice this year to spotlight portrayals of womanhood through workshops with over 1,000 Saudi women staged across the country. And what you've done is incorporated recordings of their singing, their texts and drawings into your installation. And that is a significant undertaking. Did you encounter challenges in adopting this participatory approach?
Always. Participatory artworks are complicated by the risk of things not going the way the author, which is the artist usually, wants them to go. But I usually take these kind of challenges or variables as part of the artwork and allow it, give it some space so it happens. So yeah, there are a lot of challenges. There are challenges of numbers of people. I usually work, in order to get an intimate connection with people who are in your participatory sessions, you should be able to look them in the eye. When you say the words, do you understand? You can actually see the nods. And so that connection within the room that you're presenting your ideas. For the Venice Biennale, which was a really pleasant surprise, when we opened up our link in Riyadh, 350 people registered within 3 hours. And I got very, very worried that how will I control a room like that? And so we took down the link. In the end, it was so much fun. It was children, mothers. I was shouting at the top of my lungs, and everybody was really having a great time. So that's one side of participatory art and the risks it carries.
And it must also carry a lot of surprises.
Oh yeah, because when you say you ask people to react to a prompt, usually you don't know what the reaction will be. Is it a powerful one? Is it something very weak, meaning they didn't understand what you're saying or they don't believe in what you're presenting? People have different talents and sometimes none. So the expectation that everybody's going to respond with an impeccable artwork and lines of poetry that you've never seen in your life is very, very ambitious. But to appreciate every gesture is the responsibility of the artist. Even people who just gave me one word, and that's it. That's all they have to hand over to me, and I appreciate that, and I receive it with real authenticity, and I look at it and I think about what made somebody just put one word on a big piece of white paper where it says "fill me," but they don't. And so, really having an open mind when receiving the response, and we've had some responses that were anonymous. People didn't want to be associated to their response or their drawing or the words, and I accept that too.
How do you build up trust? Because I imagine that's a really key thing when people come to your workshops. A lot of them won't be hugely familiar with your work, won't have met you before. And it's quite an intimate thing you're asking them to do. Have you built up strategies of sort of giving them a sense of the fact that they can trust you?
I've run participatory workshops around the world. So I've had a big performance participatory action in New York at the Guggenheim Museum. I've had a participatory artwork built during the Satoshi Triennial in Japan. I've had participatory artworks in Korea. So it's not really just my community that I've been working with over the years. But the understanding is that it's exactly like when you are sitting in a dinner table and there are people around the dinner table that you don't know, and you try to have a conversation and you try to find the line where you can connect. And so that is a really, really complex way of thinking. but you do it. You'll find it. In the end, we are all humans living on one planet, right? We will have the same emotions and experiences and connections and tragedies and just to really get rid of all the noise and go back to this human level of connection. I think this is possible anywhere in any situation. And I've tried to do my best to be honest. This is very important for an artist when they arrive to a community. Honesty, truthfulness, and a real desire to find the human connection.
And I mean, I'm quite actually envious of all the different people that you've worked with. As you said, your work goes far beyond Saudi Arabia. But to return to that and to think about this pavilion a bit more, you've titled it Shifting Sands, a Battle Song. And I want to know who or what is the battle song aimed at?
So a battle song is what a lot of people now are defining some of our traditional dances in Saudi Arabia. Dances that are performed by men as per the documentation we have. But in reality, women do perform the same dances, but inside their homes, not documented. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And this is a lot of my work revolves around this idea of invisibility and visibility and the power and politics around them. So, just because you don't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And, when you look at these dances, and right now in Saudi Arabia, uh, we are documenting this intangible heritage, creating this a national cultural archive, because a lot of our traditions are oral histories or movements through bodies or dress. And of course, historians write what they write about. But in reality, there's a larger project of understanding what a culture is through all the elements that pour into it. And so I looked at these dances that men have performed over the years, and they were rallying calls for the community. They were a performance of solidarity, as because even the gesturing, the bodies, and how they stand next to each other is very close and with arms interlinked. And also the way that the poet in the center of this dance recites a poem, and then the two sides of the dancers respond to him. And I find this a very, very like an exchange of a kind. And I thought, where's our documented dances for women? Because they're not there yet. And I decided to really create an artwork that positions itself and takes the form of this performative act of solidarity. And so I have three elements in my artwork at the pavilion in Venice. I have the sound, and so that's the speakers that I have flanking the pavilion. These represent like the dancers that stand on the sides. And then you have the soft sculpture at the heart of the artwork that moves exactly like the movements of the poet that sits at the center of the dance and inspires. The target for this battle song, this call for solidarity, this strength, you are not alone kind of statement, is meant to be given to women in my country as we enter a new phase in our history where women are very visible, included, and are part of the vision of the country moving forward.
You've just touched on the idea of documentation and what hasn't been documented, but there are things that have been in, if we look to the media, which is something that you've been interested in, there have been many assumptions sort of made about the lifestyles and also the autonomy of women in Saudi Arabia. And so in this sort of desert rose that you've created, this silk sculpture in the pavilion, you've sort of got text that sort of refers to some of the terms that have been used by media outside of Saudi Arabia to describe women there. So through your workshop and all the testimonials that you collected and the exchanges, what were some of the most surprising revelations that you came across?
Mainstream media is the main revelation we came across, because I set up a team in my studio of researchers, brilliant researchers from Bahrain, from Saudi, from the UAE, women that have constantly worked as interns in my studio over the years. And I called them up because I knew they were brilliant minds, and I told them, will you help me in this next phase? And we started to collect data, which is mainstream media, specifically in newsprint, in every language: German, Italian, French, English, Arabic, every language that we could actually translate and understand. And the revelation that I got was that most of media has been framing the Arab women, and specifically Saudi women, in a very, very weak position, with words that have been repeated since the 1960s till today. There is a rejection of the idea of change. And I think it is clickbait and easier to keep using the same structures over and over again, because their audiences are also lazy in searching for the truth. And so I call this, all of it, lazy journalism. Uh, as for the responses from the women who participated, because I did show them these articles, we discussed philosophically the idea of uh, self-identifying, so identity, and how has our identities evolved over the years as we stood in front of this media. And so we are constantly defending ourselves against these kind of terms, and never having a moment to really reflect about who we are and what we want. And so it's a battle of really identifying who you are within this cacophony of sort of racist terminology and misogynist terminology.
And what have you done with all those findings? Have you got sort of a massive archive of things that you've translated and like sort of extracted from?
Well, I have a massive archive, but we found out early on in the project that there's copyright laws for texts that are published by newspapers. The names of the authors and even the titles are creative copyright.
Right.
And so we have to think about how do we sort of name and shame, but without getting ourselves in trouble. And then that's when a creative idea evolves and comes out to be something that is much more stronger than the original intention. So for me, I started thinking, I don't want to publish the whole article. It might be misunderstood by the international audiences at the Venice Biennale that I'm glorifying this article or glorifying the writer, and so I really wanted to reduce its power by not really making it legible. Also, the way I printed it, it was on top of each other and in a very mechanical way, because that's what, for me, mass media or mainstream media looks like. It's mechanical. It's not emotional. It's not sensitive. And so that's how I placed it on the body of my soft sculptures that were at the front of the artwork and the back of the artwork. At the heart is where I placed the participatory drawings. They were much more organic, easy to read. They were not layered, they were clear. And they sit at the heart of the artwork, because I wanted the audience that came into the pavilion to use their body to navigate the artwork, to find the heart of it and to find the truth. And that effort is required today by everyone, not only regarding the status of women in Saudi Arabia or the way they're framed, but in every way possible, including a framing of other nationalities and other situations in the world.
What we've seen play out in the art world and like the sort of beyond the art world, like the international media, is this sort of tension between scrutiny of Saudi Arabia's human rights records and also this sort of international sort of ambition, but also like influx of partnerships, sort of key figures from elsewhere coming in to help build this up. And I think what has been less interrogated and has been lost in this sort of major narrative is the idea that artists and art practitioners in Saudi and elsewhere do choose to work with the Ministry of Culture. And I just wondered how you, as an artist in between these worlds, navigate these pressures.
They are the organizations that support the local arts community. Just like in the UK, you have the Arts Council. Just like in Japan, they have their own institutions that support their artists, and regardless of what everyone else feels or criticizes, and an artist works with their community and works with the institutions that support them. As for human rights criticisms and stuff like that, I feel like this argument has been debunked, especially with the Israel and Palestine situation, where the West has abandoned human rights principles completely. And so there is not a leg to stand on in this situation. In reality, censorship does exist in every country. Their human rights abuses exist in every single country. And it is up to the artists in the planet to really engage with forgotten communities or gender issues, and really bring these issues to their community, to their society, either through their art or through the institutions that support them. And institutions in every country are spaces where communities can address very, very difficult histories that have killed humans, that have destroyed the planet, and that have created wars. And I'm talking about outside of Saudi. And these institutions are spaces where people need to use with artists to bring them closer to understanding their histories and resolving the big problems of their histories.
Working on a really major commission for a desert park called Wadi Al Fan, which is opening in Al Ula. And it's a really fascinating site because it is like a pre-Islamic site that has been sort of closed until now to tourism. Can you tell us a bit more about that project?
Wadi Al Fan is a land art commission project that started with 5 artists. This is a very slow commissioning process because these artworks are meant to be permanently installed in the desert, in the landscape. I am building an artwork that is called Oasis of Stories. I started working on the idea of this project in 2016, and by the time I finish building it, hopefully in 2 years, it'll be 10 years of my life dedicated to this artwork. Al Ula, as a city, my first encounter was in 2012. I flew out in the morning and left at night because there was not a single hotel or maybe 1 or 2 fast food restaurants, but that's it. And so over the years, I've gone back to Al Ula over 40 times. My first participation in land-based art was Desert X, the first one, Desert X in 2020. And I made a set of trampolines that sat in the sand. And that was eventually acquired by the Royal Commission of Al Ula and became my first ever public artwork in my country. Because of that experience, I felt the confidence to take on another land art project. As you know, the landscape is very, very difficult. And landscape in any country would be very difficult because of the seasons changing, the rain, waterfall, the wind directions. And even if you were to design something that is based on the sun and the shadows, the sun changes its path over the year. And so multiple challenges are embedded in this as just to build it and make it look good. Then the other challenge that you would face is it's a public artwork, and the community that will have to live with this artwork that is landing on them, because I'm not originally from Al Ula. How will they connect to this artwork? What is their relationship to me and the language that I'm bringing to their landscape? And that was a huge responsibility to build trust with the community of Al Ula, to make sure that they understand this artwork is a gift to them first and foremost, and to be sure and dream of the future where they will take care of this artwork in a very, very loving way, and they become the custodians of it after I'm gone from that landscape and my art remains as my final trace. The artwork is one of my largest participatory artworks. I invited the whole of Al Ula to participate, so it was not women focused, it was everyone focused. And we ran workshops for many, many months, collecting hundreds and hundreds of drawings that responded to the people of Al Ula as being a community that is transforming in such a fast way. They were just a sleepy old town that had a few heritage sites next to them. And today they have multiple UNESCO heritage sites. They have hundreds of thousands of people coming in with the plan of expanding this, people arriving to these sites that are just stunning tombs, engravings on the rocks of every kind of civilization that you can think of came through Al Ula, through the incense route, the silk route, and left their stories on their rocks. And these rocks are protected. And my question was, where is the story of the custodians of Al Ula today? When you compare it to all the other ancient communities and kingdoms and peoples that came before them. And then I thought the artwork would be an amazing platform to preserve their current story today. And maybe in 100 years, when we go visit my artwork with the drawings of the people of Al Ula, you'll say, oh my God, they slept on things like that? That's so bizarre. Just the way about the engravings of the Nabateans or the Dadanites or, the Lahyans.
How will you sort of transfer these drawings into a work? Are you able to expand on that?
Not yet, because we are experimenting with
Right.
it. Right this second, we are thinking about the materiality of the artwork and how do we build it. I can talk to you about the materiality of the walls, as this is like this is new science that we're exploring, and it's a synergy of minds, an artist, architect, and scientists. We got together to look at an idea that was brought to us through an architect called Wa'il Awar. He has his studio in Dubai under Weiwei Architects. He had won the Golden Lion at the Venice Biennale for architecture for his ideas around thinking about a new material that is far from concrete. And we know concrete produces a huge amount of carbon
Awful. Yeah.
in the world, and it also warms cities because it holds on to heat. And there's multiple, and all of the materials has to be imported. It's not something sourced from nature in its locality, and so there, it's very problematic material. And I really thought, I don't want to build an artwork in the landscape of an area that uses this material, but that's a basis, right? To just have an intention, and you hope and wish that science and technology has arrived to a point where it can give me something different, and if not, at least my intention is placed with this artwork, and then the next generation can really deal with this problem. Luckily, there is science that supports Wael's idea, and we've been working with a great university in Saudi Arabia called the King Abdullah University for Science and Technology, KAUST for short. And they have helped us test this material, which is MgO salt, which is a waste that comes out of desalination of water from the sea. And we are the number 2 desalinators in the world after the USA. And we use and the waste is not really been mined or reused. And so we are hoping that we can mine the waste and extract the salt. This salt can actually be used as a main element in building my walls. But it's a wish. We don't know. It's untested science.
Yeah.
But if we can do this kind of experimentation through art, and maybe eventually this becomes a standard in my country or in the world when building buildings instead of using lime to cure concrete.
So thinking about like now with hindsight, looking back, can you see the way your work has shifted as the geopolitical landscape has changed?
I think my artwork is almost glued to the landscape of change. And a lot of my artworks look at moments of transformation and milestones. And, these this moment of something that is about to go away and turn into something else. And that was sort of a language that I developed unintentionally. And today I can look back and think about it that way. Also, a lot of the topics that I lived, and that's why they are lived experiences. And of course, no life is repeated in an identical loop. There's constant change and renewal and evolution. And so a lot of my artworks really were a reflection of my personal life as a woman living in my country and outside my country too. And the artworks really reflect these moments very intimately. And sometimes I look at artworks that I made just 20 years ago and they feel like history, like as if they were ancient. They belong in, museums that preserve history, not contemporary art. I'm very proud of this because it shows you that I was not working with any other attitude except uh, truth and honesty.
To even be able to get to a stage where you're making work with 1,000 people participating, I was thinking that the logistics to organize that.
We do work almost 7 months before a workshop starts. So it's 7 months of organizing, preparing, thinking, and then really the magic happens during the workshop. And it's very important for an artist to be clear with their audiences, saying why I'm doing this workshop, and where will their drawings go, and what they should expect from me as an artist when I take their expressions with me to build an artwork. As for the Royal Commission Balula, which is the land art project, which is taking many, many years, it's very hard for the participants to imagine what their drawings are going to look like when it's complete. So you can't just take an art or a drawing from a participant and tell them, see you in 3 years. It just has no meaning to children who participated, to elders. And so we decided to create different moments where we celebrate their participation. I have an example here. For example, we produced a book of their drawings. We had a gorgeous exhibition of their drawings, and we're doing a big book launch in October. So we continue to create the celebratory moments where, it's not just take and disappear and then here's an artwork and then buy. No, it comes back over and over to just validate that their participation has been seen. I see you, I see what you've given me, and I want to celebrate it far from me. So just let's celebrate the drawings, putting them in a book, having music recital on the night of the opening, just a big celebration. And then when the time comes and the artwork opens, they've already had their party. Now let's do a second party where we really look at this artwork in its entirety and how I've embedded their expressions alongside mine.
Did you know what to expect when you were asked to participate in Venice, and then when you were installing the works? Like, did you have any expectations of your own?
Well, I've been going to the Venice Biennale for almost 12 years. And I have been very, very attentive to what I was seeing. I understood what that platform was compared to other biennales in the world. It's the oldest, but it's also based on nationhood, whereas other biennales are not. And nationhood alongside art is a very complicated situation for any artist to deal with, because do you represent a country, or do you bring your singular voice? And that's what art is about, is your singular voice. And then suddenly you have to look at your singular voice alongside your whole country and your whole nation, and all the cultures and the pluralities that come out of these situations. So it was a very complicated way to look at things, but I've been going for many, many years, and I've been thinking about this moment for most of my career, preparing what I would deliver that would, honor the two. The artwork is still in Venice, so
Mhm.
it's only been the summer, so we still have a few more months of it to be seen and activated and thought about. And there's a closing ceremonies of November, and
Yeah.
then the deinstall. So it will take a while until we have the energy to think what next. I do have dreams. I would love this artwork to reside in an institution in my country. I feel like it is a document of a moment, and it belongs at in an institution in my country, but in public view, not in storage. That's where I have arrived with my thoughts
Yeah.
around what next.